death, your father seems to have, over the last 72 hours, started to bring people together, which is pretty remarkable in this period that we're going through, particularly in this town. Can that last? Can something good come of that?
Well, a girl can dream. Look, outside of Washington, in your businesses and our communities, people actually do like each other more often than not, and they do find common ground and they solve problems. The contagion hasn't spread to the extent that people in Washington think it's, the world's coming to an end. It really isn't. This is still a pretty dynamic country, and there are a whole lot of people focused on solving problems, and they know that with civility and kindness and compassion and generosity of spirit, you can do far more than pushing people down and making yourself look better and all the things that go on here. So I'm much more optimistic because I don't come here often. And I follow this kind of abstractly now, not consumed by it. But I hope, look, my dad was a really unique, special guy, and my mom's passing similarly kind of brought, hopefully it's not the end of an era, because that's the other thing that people talk about. That would be bad. It'd be bad to be the end of an era where you actually care about family and you support one another and you show integrity and compassion and courage instead of what we now reward as a sign of strength now is measured differently. So I hope it's not an end of era. My belief is that people I hang out with don't think it is.
Yeah. So you were a faithful son in a very strong family, so you obviously learned a lot of things from your father. But if you had to distill it down to one big thing you learned from your father and one big thing that we should learn from his life and his legacy, how would you describe that?
Not one. I'll say a couple that people haven't talked about. One is the guy was like incredibly competitive.
Yeah. I saw him play horseshoes at Kennebunkport.
Well, life, not just horseshoes, but winning politically.
Yeah.
Winning in the right way, but he was very competitive. Just as one, I was thinking about this, in 1980, he was running against Governor Reagan, and just for the record, I remember these things because I was full-time as a volunteer. He won 2-1 in Pennsylvania, he won Michigan, he carried Oregon, he won like 15 primaries, not that it really mattered, the thing was over, but a week before the end of the primary process, my dad was like in Washington State campaigning. Jim Baker finally had to drag him off the campaign trail, saying it's over. He's a very competitive guy. I'd say that just his persona doesn't necessarily show that. Secondly, he was very entrepreneurial. People kind of forget that at the early age of, 23 with little George W. In a cradle somewhere, they went to Odessa, Texas to start out, and he worked for Dresser Industries, but shortly thereafter, before he was 30, he was the CEO of a new venture called Zapata that turned into Zapata Offshore that was one of the pioneers in the offshore drilling business. He took big risks. I remember in the mid-'60s, I was, I don't know what age, I was probably 12 years old. I came home, and I never saw my dad unhappy, because if he was, and he was, I'm sure, he never would share it with his kids. And he was really down, and I said, what happened? He said, well, we had three rigs, and one of them just got wiped out in Hurricane Carla, I believe it was. Literally 1/3 of your assets wiped out. For those in the oil sector, you know that now you kind of batten down the hatches. Well, in 1960, in entrepreneur oil and gas exploration world, they didn't have that opportunity. So those are the two things that I would say are things that people don't realize. And he used those tools as a public leader as well. But look, the guy was just the most generous, kind person you'd ever meet, decent. And he treated everybody the same way. So I've probably gotten, I'm still an email guy, I'm kind of old school, and I've gotten 1,800 emails in the last 2 days, and I'll respond to all of them because my dad would ask me to do that. And the ones that I most love are the ones that people I've never met that said, I met your dad, he did something incredible that redirected my life in a way just because he actually cared. He didn't think, well, I'm a big dog, you're not. Let me move on to the important people. He treated everybody the same way, and that's the